I'm Danelle.
And I'm Andy.
And we're parents and ministry leaders still learning to disciple not only the kids in our own homes, but the kids in our ministries.
So we're having conversations with innovative leaders who are fostering a strong partnership between the church and the home.
This is the Nurturing Faith Collective podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Nurturing Faith Collective podcast. Andy, so good to see you today.
Hey, pal. Listen, it's been a minute since we've been together, right? We were together down in Orlando, Florida for the Children's Pastors Conference where we recorded our last episode. And I know, the listeners don't know, but you and I both know that we've been individually sick since we've come home from Florida.
Yeah, pretty much. It's been a little rough.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, there's a potential that park hopping all 4 parks in one day did
Not a good
something
idea?
to my body.
Maybe not your best plan.
Right? There are consequences for our decisions. But
Was
yes.
it worth it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe not.
Absolutely.
You should tell everybody someday about all the souvenirs you collected, by the way.
So many. It was a great day. But more than that, it was an amazing conference. It was so fun to be together with other leaders from the Nurturing Faith Collective, other leaders from Bethel, other leaders from really across the world who are all in family ministry. I came home so filled, not just relationally from seeing you all, but the worship that we experienced, the learning that we experienced. It was a great week.
Snacks.
Yeah. Like I walked in one night and they just go, here's a Mickey pretzel.
Awesome food.
Like here's a
You're
Mickey pretzel that you have to pay
best
like $9 for in the park. Yeah. So
that's why we go every year. It's for the snacks and
for the snacks,
the community and the worship and the training and the equipping and all the things. Well, yeah, when we were there, we got to have a wonderful conversation with Dr. Denise Muir-Keesbo. Man, that lady is amazing.
I know. And, we have gotten the pleasure of being in class with her. We've gotten the pleasure of talking to her outside of that context. And for me to know that the listeners of the podcast got to hear a little bit of who she is, her story, her heart for ministry, her wisdom, how she has trusted God for so long to lead her through these things. I was so grateful for this opportunity, this platform that people could hear from her.
If you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode yet, you have got to go back and listen to it. The conversation that Andy had with Dr. Denise Muir-Keesbo is so good.
Yes. And on today's episode, we're excited to introduce you to another member of the Nurturing Faith Collective, and that's Jeff Weldon. He is the next-gen pastor and church planter at Belonging Community Church in Urbanna, Maryland. He and his wife have planted this church together. She is lead pastoring. He is handling all of the next-gen family ministry, children's student ministry. And we got to hear a lot of his experience of planting this church, some of the amazing wins that they have, and also some of the struggles that they have. And so I can't wait for folks to hear his story. He was really honest. I think that was my favorite part.
I think that was probably my favorite part. I love when a leader is honest and transparent, and there was no bravado to it of like, I am this expert church planter, because I don't think those words can go together in a sentence.
Right.
No one is an expert at church planting.
So let's jump right into it. You all enjoy this conversation with Jeff Weldon. Hey, Jeff, we are so excited to have you on the podcast today. Man, we have so many exciting things to talk about. So let's jump right in.
Yeah, glad to be here, guys.
Well, Jeff, we would love to hear more about you, about your family, what you do in ministry. Just clue us in on what you're up to and what we can learn about you.
Yeah, so I'm in kind of a weird place in ministry now. My wife and I just planted a church. It's 4-month-old baby church in Urbanna, Maryland, called Belonging Community Church. Brooke, my wife, is a lead pastor of that. I do all things next gen, and I'm bivocational right now because it's still a baby church. So I'm doing some substitute teaching at a Christian school. We've got 5 kids between like 6th grade and 22. So we're busy. We're busy people.
So is it when you have a 4-month-old church plant, do you sleep the same amount as you do when you have a 4-month-old baby?
It's something like that. Yeah.
I bet you're in a fog. What are we doing? What are we
Hey,
doing?
man, thanks for just knowing where you are today.
Yeah.
Are you at home? Do you know where you are? Okay.
I'm in my home office, so that's a pretty rare occasion right now. But yeah, I'm actually like in a home office. There's aren't kids running around, and it's quiet. It's awesome.
That's amazing. Would you tell us a little bit about how we know you? Like, what's our common thread here?
Yeah, so we at different times we're at Bethel Seminary getting a Master of Arts in Children's and Family Ministry degree. I got mine earlier than you guys. I'm older than you guys.
Yeah, you're the old vet.
I graduated, what's that say? 2012. It's up there. So 2012 I graduated. I think you guys were there after me. And so yeah, we've all some of those common experiences.
Yeah.
And of course, now we work together through the Nurturing Faith Collective. Do you want to share a little bit about we've shared how we're contributing to the collective through the podcast, but what team are you on? What role are you serving in?
Yeah, so I'm on a curriculum and resource team, and one of the things that we want to have up on that website are some free resources for children's ministry leaders to be able to equip parents in this partnership, also directly for parents to be able to do some of that work at home on passing faith along to the next generation. And so I'm working with Dee, and we are getting resources together to get on that website for leaders and for parents to partner together in this family discipleship thing.
Yeah, and Danella, as we've discussed in the past, we have no need for any more help. We don't need any resources. We're nailing parenting right now. No, of course we're not. Of course we're not. I also want to point out, Jeff, thank you for wearing something different than a green sweater today. So I don't know if maybe this was on purpose or not.
It is my favorite color, though. So
maybe there was an email that told me to wear it, and I just ignored it. I don't know.
I'll have to specify.
It's okay. So how do you make the jump from children's and family ministry to, hey, I got an idea. Let's go start a church together, and I'll own all of that and co-own a lot of the church planting.
Yeah, for us, it was my wife heard, and then she tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, guess what God told me?" So, so I got to come along for the ride. But yeah, about a couple of years ago, she kind of first heard that nudge from God, like, "Hey, there's a town. It's 10 minutes away from our house. It's got 20,000 people in it, and there are no churches in it. And I think God wants us to start one." And at first, I thought, that's crazy with that. I would never do that. But God started work on me as well, heard that call. We partnered with an agency called Stadia that does church planting. We went through a whole year-long discovery process through them, and they eventually gave us the go-ahead and said, yeah, you're ready to do this. And then so we began doing the work, and Brooke did a lot of the heavy lifting on finding people to support us and donate equipment and finding a place for us to meet and all those kind of things. And then I got to do what I do best, and that is really focus on the kids and family and next gen part of this, and really kind of pour my experience and expertise into that limited area of it, while kind of dabbling in all the other areas too. So it's been quite a roller coaster for the past couple of years getting this thing off the ground. It's cool that it's open, and it's any emotion that you could feel. If you had an emotion dartboard and you just close your eyes and threw a dart at it, you'd be feeling that kind of all at the same time. So
that's amazing. So the thought that I just had was, how are your kids adjusting to this? We know, church planting is a huge commitment, but so is parenting.
Yeah, and so the kids are all in on this church plant thing as well. So they're setting up stuff in the morning, and my teenage daughter is the pro presenter slide master. My 7th grader leads preschool. I mean, they're kind of all in on this as well. I think they're doing good. It's been kind of an interesting part of what we do as church planters, is also investing in them and trying to make sure that we're spending the time that we need, the quality time that we need with our own kids, helping that disciple them, and not just pouring into the church at large. One of the great things we did is we took that week between Christmas and New Year's off, and we just all went away together. We didn't do anything real special. We were in some little town in Kentucky and went to the birthplace of Colonel Sanders and did other kind of wacky things, but it was so good just to be able to focus in, spend that time together. So they're doing good, and you know, in many ways we're making memories for life and this
Right.
crazy adventure that we're on.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Right.
I love that, because you're bringing your kids in on the mission.
Yeah.
And I don't remember where I heard it one time. Someone was like, "Oh, you know, how do you help your kids, you know, be okay with mom or dad being gone all the time doing ministry?" And, you know, their advice was, you remind them how they're partnering in the mission as well.
Right.
That they're not just, you know, letting mom and dad go, or, you know, letting this happen, but they're supporting, you know, the advancement of the gospel. So I think that's so cool. Your whole family is participating in that.
Yeah, it's something that we've always done as we've, you know, served in churches, led in churches for the last 18 or so years for me, as my kids have just always been a part of what we do, and up, you know, painting things and setting things up and just, you know, doing everything. And so it's a cool way to do it.
For sure. I was talking last week to this guy Austin, who I work with, who does student ministry for us, and there was a need that needed to be filled immediately, and it was not a convenient time, you know, to fill that need. And I said, I got it, I'll do it. And then I turned to him and I said, why did my parents set an example for serving in the local church? I could have been free from this. So,
Well,
But you would
and
have
it's
been
cool to see.
so sad.
It's cool to see how that lives out, though. So my oldest is 22. She lives in DC. She's working there and living her best life down there. But she's a part of a church there in DC, and she's involved in children's ministry. So as a 22-year-old, she's involved with preschoolers. She's handing out goldfish and doing all the things that preschool folks do. And so it's cool to see her already have that idea at 22. Like, this is what you do.
right. Now, here's what I want to know, because, you know, Danelle, you've been in the situation. I've been in the situation. Many of the ministry leaders who listen to this podcast have been in the situation where they have joined a church staff. They have taken over responsibility and leadership of a family ministry, a children's ministry, next gen ministry. And if they're really honest, they have said, I really wish the person before me would not have set it up this way. Oh, if I could start from scratch, I would do it this way. You are now starting from scratch with this church
Right.
plant, and you have a pretty good in with the lead pastor. So what do you find yourself doing differently, if anything, as you have launched this next gen ministry in a church plant with really no precedent before you?
Yeah, this is definitely unique because I've served at, I think, 3 other churches before this where I have stepped into those roles and gone, oh man, what's this about? So, right from here, Brooke and I were very intentional at coming up with values for our church, for our ministries, and saying, this is who we want to be about. And so I don't have to worry about correcting past mistakes. I've got values now that I'm saying, okay, this is what we are, and we work on those closely together, which is a nice situation to be able to work so close with a lead pastor. There's also some responsibility with that. You know, our goal is to grow this thing and to turn this church over to others someday when we're old and grayer and ready to move on. And so we want this church to be living according to those values that we put in place. And so there's kind of an onus on us not to have this thing off the rails when it's time to turn it over to someone else.
Can you share what one of those values is and how that plays out in family ministry?
Yeah, for sure. One, and I was thinking about it before we got on together. One of them is partnership. That's one of our values. And so when it comes to family ministry, it means that I know I totally recognize that I am not the one who's just imparting Jesus to these kids, that it's got to be a partnership with the families as we do this. And so that's a really important part of what we do. Say everything that we do, we're going to make sure that we're partnering with families, we're partnering with our community, we're partnering with local agencies. That's partnership is a huge part of what we're about.
How challenging has that been? Because you had said that this is an area that has had no churches. So
Right.
Are you finding Like, what are you finding with these parents that are participating in your church plant?
Yeah, I mean, our parents are all over the map. I've always thought, as I lead ministry over the past, couple decades, like I've got to anticipate to have a kid in the room who has been at church every Sunday and could tell the stories better than me and has eaten like more goldfish than you can count. And then I've got to have a kid in the word who only knows Jesus as a curse word, and then everywhere in between.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're experiencing in this community. We've got kids on our launch team who have been to church every week. My own kids are on my launch team. I know they can tell the stories better than I can. But I've got kids who've never been in a church before, and parents who aren't really sure what church is all about. And so really, it's a really unique challenge. But, all of us have in common that we're all very busy. We all have in common that we all love our kids and want the best for them. And so in that sense, we're all on kind of an equal footing as to just some of the coaching that can happen, as to conversations you can have with your kids at home, things that you can do, the importance of being at church on Sunday, all these kind of things we're all on pretty equal footing on. So that's a good thing to remember.
No, we mentioned we did a teaser episode for this podcast, and I had mentioned a story in talking to another leader and just saying somebody needs to write the book on how to help kids at a church plant capture the vision of planting that church, because
It could be Jeff.
They might be the only third grader, in their children's ministry at the start. And so 2 episodes in, and here we are with somebody who can answer that question. So, maybe not from a church plant standpoint, but I know that we have people that are leading in ministries that listen, that they may be at the smaller church in town, and the bigger church, in town may be down the street. And, your parents are starting to kind of ask, hey, how come there's not this, or how come there's not that? And, you're trying to help kids understand, oh, listen, there might only be 5 of you, but here's the really powerful thing we can do because there are 5 of you. So how have you guys really helped kids and students capture the vision of this church plant, and not just their parents?
Yeah, that's great. And I've always been at the bigger church in town. So this is a new experience for me too, to say, well, I've got 6, 7 kids in the room. How do we do this? But, ultimately, we just try to help the kids remember that this is not for us, that we don't set all this stuff up just for the 6 or 7 of us in this room. As much as I love you and care about you and want you to know Jesus, we're doing this because we want everybody to know this good news about this God who loves you and created you on purpose and for a purpose. And so it means that every week there's a challenge to go talk to someone about what they've learned. Every week there's that challenge to say, hey, this month our theme is love. I mean, February, right? So the theme is love. Hey, there's someone in your church who doesn't know that they're in your school, on your soccer team, somewhere, that doesn't know all the time that they're loved. They need you and they need Jesus. And so just helping them be about that mission right from the very beginning is one of those pieces of the puzzle. And then because we are a set up teardown church, we meet in a school. Everyone gets to participate. People who get there early are helping set things up. And the last thing we do as we get ready to dismiss and say, okay, let's start to put this media center back together. Let's start to work together so that the school that we're meeting in knows that the people here are good people. And so when we mention to them something about Jesus, they're like, yeah, we like them, instead of, oh, Jesus people, we don't like them. So,
oh, you mean those messy people that mess up our school?
Stuff away.
So they get to be right in on it right from the get-go. So it's cool stuff.
That's really, really cool. Are there intentional things that you do maybe at the end of the service or in some midweek communication that spur on that sort of, hey, go tell somebody?
Yeah, so that's at the end of service. We always have some next steps for kids. We never want them to leave without knowing, what are we going to do with this stuff that we just experienced and heard. And then all throughout the week, and that's a really big key with our partnership with parents, is that we're leaking out information all week long on our social media about what their kids experienced on Sunday, about simple things they can do with it at home, or just simple things like, hey, it's National Chocolate Cake Day. Anything we can to just keep that conversation going with parents, and so that we all know, like, we're all in this together. We're better together, is what we're all about. So,
And just another question on Sunday, what happens at home in the afternoon when the sermon has gone long that morning and you're stuck with the kids?
So
He
here's
doesn't
the
make dinner. That's what happens. You're not
I
here.
am the one who makes dinner.
I know.
But actually, Brooke is really, really good at, and that's just something that we hold in common and saying, hey, we want to make sure our services are a certain length. And she certainly, because she's worked in children's before, gets that piece. So we have, in 4 months, we haven't had that happen. Yeah, but I mean, we have had wonky things happen, trailers coming late with all of our equipment, a church custodian who comes late and we've got to scramble to get in, or a school custodian who comes late, we've got to scramble to get in. And it's stressful and it's hard. One of the things that we've really begun to focus in on is kind of ask a question. And this comes from Beth Guckenberger, that is, what would be a win for the enemy this morning? What is the enemy's agenda for our church service? And we started to just ask each other that question during the week, Saturday night. And oftentimes it comes with distraction. It comes with division. It comes with some of those kind of things. So now when some of those things happen, when, someone doesn't unlock the door they're supposed to unlock and we're scrambling around trying to find it, when my middle schoolers who helped me set up start fighting about who's going to clip the little yellow clips on the play panels right, or whatever it is, we start to see, hey, you know what? There's a spiritual element to this, and we don't have to react out of our own just, natural reactive selves about it. We can remember, hey, I think the enemy is maybe trying to stir some things up here. And it helps us to have a lot more Jesus-y response, a lot more mature response to it. And to be able to look back at the end and say, oh yeah, that did happen, and look what came out of it. So that's really been something we've been doing the last couple of months, and it's just been transformative into what we're doing and how we can react on Sunday afternoons.
I love that so much. I mean, it is such a perspective shift to take what could be an annoyance, what could be a stressor, what could induce some panic, and it's really even spoken more to vision of what we're after together. That's really good. Well done on that. I would imagine those types of stories, those types of moments create some of the best magic, in what y'all are doing. We like to ask our guests, so many times we will say, oh, this thing happened with this kid, or this thing happened with this family. Oh, I should have written that down. Oh, I could write a book one day. What's a moment for you, either in this church planting over the last several months and last several years, or just an experience that you've had as a parent or ministry leader that you think, man, I should have written that one down?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this a while, so there's plenty to choose from. But I mean, I think really it has been over the years just getting an understanding of it doesn't have to be perfect, because I am a person when it's not going how I planned it, how two kids start to bicker, or the youth pastor takes all my scissors and I'm scrambling to find them, or whatever it is. I mean,
They do always steal our stuff.
We've got the best
true.
stuff.
It's true.
But you can feel that blood pressure rising. You can just feel yourself going. And more over the years, I've come to realize, like, hey, you know what? It really isn't that important. All of these little detail things, it's important to plan. It's important to have excellence. But you know what? It's even more important to just stick in there with the Holy Spirit and say, okay, I'm not alone on this. Let's do this. And the Holy Spirit can overcome all kinds of things, even lack of scissors. And I think that's the thing that I've learned the most. It's the thing that I wish that I knew 18 years ago as opposed to now, is that I don't have to be so anxiety ridden over every little thing being perfect.
Yeah. So my thoughts, because you've been in ministry for a long time, some of us not as much, not as seasoned as you.
Old. I think she just called me old.
No, I said seasoned. I said you're flavorful. I don't know. Right. What advice would you give to the young leader who, maybe hasn't learned those things? Like, what would you encourage them with? Obviously, we all come from a bunch of different contexts, different situations arise. What do you pass on to that new leader?
Yeah. I mean, for me, as a younger, more immature, less experienced leader, I think one of the things I often try to do is to try to, through force of will and enthusiasm and whatever, try to make things happen a certain way. Whether it came to trying to help parents, do devotionals at home, or how are we going to set up our Sunday morning, or what kind of, volunteer recruiting do we need, or whatever. I tried to make it happen without always considering slowing down and the value of partnering with others, real partnership where there's give and take, and they're hearing and I'm hearing. And I think that's the advice I would give that new children's leader is slow down and think of partnerships and think of relationships more than getting your way, more than even if your ideas are really great, they aren't going to go anywhere if you're not listening to others, if you're not in true partnership with them. And so I think that's the advice I would give that younger leader, that new leader. Slow down, form those partnerships, prioritize and fight for the relationships, and then your great ideas, they'll come about just through those relationships and partnerships, as opposed to you trying to force things on your schedule.
Yeah, that's so good.
Let's really drill down here. So if there's a part-time or an unpaid ministry leader right now listening to this, and they're thinking, do you know what I have to get done between now and Sunday? And I'm working another job. I got to go by the church. I got to cut the things out. I got to make sure we have enough Q-tips, right? I got to set up all
Find
the
the
rooms.
scissors.
I got to get the check-in stuff ready. What is, for that leader, which, by the way, if that's you, keep crushing it, right?
Yeah.
But for that leader who listens to you say, yeah, you got to develop some partnerships with the parents. What is like step one, like today, one thing they can do to begin that work?
Yeah, I think it really is like, just really prayerfully, like taking a look at what kids are in your ministry, what families are in your ministry. I mean, to start with, is there anyone who's kind of invested in this thing? Is there anyone who's that parent who will, step up and volunteer at the drop of a hat, things like that? Is there some sort of unofficial position that you can help them be in? Say it is like, hey, I need someone to just come in and cut out all these stars and get the printing and materials ready for Sunday. And maybe there's somebody who can help do some of that, who actually would be energized by doing something like that for you, just to take something, off your plate. And then where I look is, who are those parents who are not invested yet? Who do I see Johnny every week, but Johnny's mom, Johnny's dad, Johnny's auntie, whoever brings them, they're not volunteering at all around the church. That's untapped kingdom work right there. And discipleship for that person, because we're all called to serve and be a part of what's happening around the local church and in our communities. And so is there someone there who I can reach out to and begin to disciple just by saying, would you help in some small way in what we're doing? Not just because they're not doing anything and it's like a feeding frenzy, like we all need to like jump on them and see if we can get them onto our teams. But is there something small that they can do that actually helps them understand the importance of service in their Christian life? So.
Yeah, that reminds me of the concept of renters versus owners. You guys familiar with this? So, I mean, you know the basic principles, but when we kind of hoard those responsibilities of like, it's my job, whether it's part-time or full-time, like it's my responsibility. When we keep that away from people in our church, we make them renters instead of allowing them to really own the ministry, to be responsible for things. I've heard some friends call it like, what buckets can you give away to someone else so that they're in charge of that bucket? You're still overseeing, everything, but that's their bucket. And I think that's a wonderful way to engage parents, especially the ones that are, I'm just assuming here that the ones that are in your context right now, Jeff, that haven't grown up to know Jesus, have no understanding of the faith, they're not going to be volunteering to teach a Sunday school class. And so cutting out stars or picking up, snacks from the grocery store, those are going to be the avenues to get them to a place where they're like, you know what, I think I can do a little bit more. I think I can, help once a month. I think I can. Yeah. And so I just think that is awesome. Just great.
And when I asked the question, you could have said, okay, put down the stars, put down the work, and go and have coffee with them. But I love the way that you framed it, because it's, hey, come alongside me, come join me in this thing. And oh, by the way, you could also say, here is a pack of stuff. Can you do this at home? That's a first starting place as well, right? You don't have to, if you can't make the time to come with me, and come join me here at the church. Hey, I have this stuff that you can do at home. But at least there, you're starting that relationship and you're starting some ownership. And ultimately, the kids are seeing their parent, their caregiver, take part in the thing that's for them. And there's something powerful that happens there.
And then what you have to do as a leader then is make sure that you are not micromanaging. Because for me as a leader, and excellence I hold as a really high value. So then all of a sudden you start to look and say, well, it's not how I would have cut out those stars. That's not how I would have.
That could be a whole nother episode, man.
We do the same thing with our kids at home as we teach them chores like washing the dishes. They're not going to wash them as well as I wash them at first, and I get to coach them, and I also get to say, there's a level where I can say, okay, that is good enough. It's not perfect. It's not how I would have wanted it. It's not how I would have done it, but it is actually a valid way to do it. And so that's because that's an easy way to drive people off, is if you start to have them come alongside you, but then you really are still holding it yourself. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we see that a lot in ministry of, I just need some help. I need some help. And then someone comes to help and you're like, did you not do any in my way? And they're like, well, then I can't help you. And you're like, no, it'll help. And it's like,
yeah.
Okay.
Danelle, is this just confession for you right now?
It is.
What this is? We've talked about family ministry. We've talked about church planting. At some point along the way, again, if we're honest, which we've tried to create a space on this podcast where we can just talk honestly about these things. Have you woken up one day and said, "There's no way I can do this anymore," but yet you're still here? So, what helped you continue with this and persevere?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for 18 years, and anyone who's been in ministry for any period of time, and you deal with stuff, you deal with church hurt and unkind words and all kinds of things along the way. I certainly have. I think when it comes to some of those kind of situations, I've really leaned into the Bible, really leaned into especially Psalms. David and the other Psalm writers spoke a whole lot about things were not going very well for them. And so those are perfectly acceptable things to bring to God. He knows that things are not going well for you. And so it's comforting to see that other people dealt with that and they went to God with it, and God didn't ignore them or cast them off, but listened and responded. And so that's been huge for me. In this church planting season, Brooke and I will wake up on any given day and look at each other going, that's it, we're done. But this is too much. It's a lot of stuff. It's a lot. And, but just remembering God's call and that, and his, and his call to this mission, I think it is a great reminder for us. Like, yeah, this is difficult, but God did call us to us, and he didn't call us to fail. So, it really is leaning into God in those seasons for me. And sometimes, the help of a therapist as well has really been important in my journey. When I feel beaten up, when I feel discouraged, just having that professional to talk to help remind me of some true things as well and point me in the right direction has been huge.
Well, and that just goes back to you saying, don't do this alone.
Yeah.
There are a variety of ways that you need help. You need help from senior leadership if you're in a church context.
Yeah.
You need help from family that is supporting you in this. You need help from a professional counselor who can help you unpack some things and talk through some things. You need help from your friends, from volunteers, from the children themselves, right? So it's a great way to really think about this whole partnership in family ministry. And you have articulated that so clearly for me today, and I so much appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I just can't go to my lead pastor right now to complain about my boss. So
yeah. What's the HR situation? Yeah, I don't. Yeah. Or you all just like severance and you're like, we leave work at work and home at home.
Yeah, that would be healthy if we did that, and we're getting better at it. But man, it's so hard. It's been so hard for us over the years because we've served together in so many different contexts of just being able to leave the shop talk at the shop and being able to focus on each other. I think right now we're in a season of life where we're really trying to be intentional about that, because that can be pretty dangerous for us.
Sure. Wow, man, it is so clear that God is doing something incredible in your local church context and in your marriage and in your family. And Danelle, I don't know about you, but this is why we're doing this podcast, so we can talk to people who are really doing this work, learning, succeeding, failing, trusting, all of those things. So, man, I just appreciate the honest conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. It's been fun.
We just so appreciate, being able to support you and be a part of the global church who are serving children and families all over. And so thank you for just leaning in and being vulnerable with us. That's something that a lot of people struggle with. So very much appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty. And we will be excited to hear more from you as your church continues to grow and expand. And we're here for the journey.
And we can't wait to see what kind of resources your team comes up with for Nurturing Faith Collective, for leaders and parents, and we'll be releasing those things as they come. So if you're listening to this, stay on the lookout for those things in the near future. So thank you for listening to the Nurturing Faith Collective podcast. We will see you next.